Thank you very much, guys. Didn't actually expect to see so many of you here this morning, but a pleasure to have you with us, as always. As mentioned, my name's Wayne. Just wanted to give a bit of a brief overview of my career to date, really, just to give a bit of a history, what brings me to the point which we are today. Started at a very small club in the UK, Rushden and Diamonds. Some of you will be familiar with it, some of you won't. But this basically gave me the grounding in groundsmanship, working with some very good and experienced individuals, some of which you will also know in Ewan Hunter and Jim Buttar, who's currently the head groundsman at Twickenham Stadium at the moment. Fortunately for me, they also went on to pastures new and bigger and better things, shall we say, which also created an opportunity for me at this club at that point. I actually made it to be the youngest head groundsman in the Football League at a very young age, which gave me some pretty good experience. And again, just with my relationship with the guys and Jim, he called me one day saying, would I be interested in going to work at White Hart Lane, the old ground where Tottenham played. Obviously, good opportunity, another step up in the Premier League. So I went to work there for a few years, obviously getting good understanding of stadium grounds management. And then at that point, Tottenham was then developing the new training ground, of which I moved over to head up the academy section at the time with Nick Phillips. Obviously, some of you guys will also be familiar with Nick. Very good guy. Obviously, again, trying to test myself within the industry. There was an opening at Northampton Saints Rugby, one of the biggest rugby teams in England. I moved there for 3 years, and at that time, the stadium development at Tottenham had just started, and they was after a guy to come and lead the new stadium, which unfortunately that guy was chosen to be me, and I went back to Tottenham to head up the new stadium before transitioning over to Tiller's Turf, where we grow the hybrid turf, and then over now to Hatko as well. Again, just looking at the Tottenham was the first lay and play pitch in the Premier League, so that's where I sort of generated my natural interest for the lay and play model. Obviously, you'll all know the Tottenham Stadium, very famous, biggest club stadium in London, hosts the NFL International Series games, retractable field, controlled environment, so many challenges for turf management. One of the biggest challenges was obviously turf. Obviously, it was one of the first lay and play systems. Originally, the field came in from Holland. Big learning curve. Went out to Holland for 3 months, essentially to try and assist with the maintenance before it ended up coming into the stadium for the stadium opening in 2018. Looking at Hatko, we're operational in over 100 countries around the world. The last few years, we've hosted some very significant tournaments, some of the biggest in world football. Obviously, you will know, with the Champions League finals in 2023 and 2024, Conference League final, Nations League final. Predominantly, Hatko is a synthetic turf manufacturer, but has a very strong lead now in the hybrid turf market. We all know hybrid turf, 2 different types of hybrid, one being hybrid stitch and one hybrid carpet. Hybrid carpet, in the last few years particularly, has come to the forefront for the multi-use stadium particularly. So obviously, me being at Tottenham, hybrid carpet was the chosen model, just to give the venue that flexibility in the system each year to change, basically lay and play, like does what it says in the tin. The process basically starts for a lay and play pitch at the farm. So I always say around turfing, the turfing is the most important thing for the stadium. The quality of the turf starts with the farm. And that was part of the process which we followed with Tottenham, bearing in mind the first field came from the Netherlands. We wasn't really happy with the quality. There were a few things we wanted to change. So after that first year, we brought the pitch in-house, essentially back to the UK, where we could have more control. So when we say by more control, we're talking about day-to-day maintenance. So we actually brought stadium maintenance to the farm. So everything was hand mowed, sprayed. We did verticutting, and more general cultural practice to essentially ensure that surface was 100% clean when it comes to the stadium. Very important, because what you see a lot with turf, unfortunately, you do get organic build-up, which obviously we don't want when we're bringing to the stadium, cause later issues down the line. But essentially the process is, we're looking for a relatively flat plot. We always sand cap the field, essentially just gives that clean backing, which gives us more consistent level once it comes into the stadium. Once the field's been sand capped, we start laying out the carpet, glue the carpet together, and then the infield process can begin. We always use a drop spreader, GPS, to obviously ensure consistency within the carpet, very uniform. And then seeding, obviously ongoing maintenance. Depending on the time of year, sometimes we use germination sheets just to speed up that recovery and establishment period before obviously harvesting and then taking to the stadium. A few pictures from my time at Tottenham again with the lay and play model just to establish the multi-use functionality of the stadium. One weekend we had concert, Lady Gaga, and then we're bringing back the field trays, bringing the pitch, and within 3 days we've got a pitch ready to play for Southampton in the Premier League on a Saturday. So this still today is probably the closest period which it's been done in the Premier League towards a Premier League fixture. Most guys maybe like 2 or 3 weeks just to allow the turf to establish, all the turf joints to knit in close and neat. But ultimately Tottenham will always push the boundaries because that's the type of club they are, and that's what the stadium was essentially built for. Just going back to the turf and some of the issues what we had, particularly with the field we brought from Holland. Originally, we had a large proportion of organic build-up within the profile. The majority of the fibres within the carpet was buried, which obviously led to an underperforming carpet system once it came to the stadium. So that led to an interest in sort of developing a bit of a PQS document specifically for the turf farm to ensure that we could basically build that quality level from the farm and give us the best quality pitch once it came to the stadium. So working with ProPitch, we developed essentially a system where we could monitor all of the installation processes at the farm to try and again just ensure that we ended up with that premium quality, and that ensured we was looking at seed purity, sand selection, free pile height, infield depths, all the things would actually give us a better quality pitch in the end. A little bit different from the general normal parameters which you'll all be testing for day to day from a field performance perspective, but we just wanted to ensure that we could obviously make sure we was getting a premium end product. Again, sort of discussed a few of the key markers which we're looking for in the turf. Obviously, we always grow predominantly in the UK specifically from the shortest period possible. We believe that's the best model because it gives us the cleanest possible surface in the end. So pitches in the UK will be grown from March, April time, and then obviously installed in July, August when the season starts. We do that for one main specific reason. Obviously, we're reducing that organic and thatch build-up, less power ingress, and the surface is always relatively clean once it arrives in the stadium. And that's basically what this slide says. We want to make sure that we're getting the surface as clean as possible, best yarn, obviously support the natural grass establishment within the carpet. This is a slide from Wembley, so very interesting. Wembley, the national stadium in the UK, hosts UK finals every year with the player finals, FA Cup, you guys will know them, I'm sure, but also a very prestigious venue for NFL International Series games as the home stadium for the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is basically a picture that shows the field after an NFL game, which is probably notorious for its high traffic, specifically in a certain point of the field down the centre. And this was Carl's feedback after the game about the pitch's performance. The glowing reference, and as you can see, the pitch has hardly been marked. Again, just looking at the schedule of Wembley and the type of events which it holds. This is what we see at Wembley as Mad May. Wembley now have 3 fields on replacement every year. So they have their busy footballing or grass sports season, and then they're into concerts on a very regular basis. I think the pitch actually comes out very soon. They're going to concerts, and another one comes in October, and then they're going to re-turf again in January, which obviously just gives the venue that flexibility to generate that additional revenue, which is required. A relatively new model for Wembley. I think they've been operating it maybe for the last 2 or 3 years, but obviously again off the back of the success of Tottenham, there's also many other stadiums within the UK and further afield which are adapting the lay and play model to give them that flexibility in the venue to host additional events. One of the sort of other key factors with the hybrid is we talk about the multi-use events, but also there are in situ applications which are equally as good, but like any pitch is only as good as the maintenance. And put this slide together basically just to show that there's always been this sort of stigma against carpets, really about that they can't be renovated or can't be renovated as well. But I think as technology's evolved over time, you could actually say that it's probably you could renovate as equally as well as a stitch surface. One thing which is massively important, particularly in certain markets, is the sustainability now going forward. I think Hatko as a company would probably be one of the leaders, we would say, in terms of we're now reclaiming our materials, we're separating the sand and the plastic, and we're essentially repurposing everything which we come into contact with. So we have a story from Wembley, and we have a very unique story coming shortly. But essentially the process is we'll reclaim the old field, shred the materials, we'll take it to a screener, we'll separate the sand and the plastic materials, we'll then put that through a wash plant, which will then give us clean yarns, which we can then agglomerate, shred, and then turn into anything from park benches or new yarn, which we can create a new carpet. And here's a video from Wembley just explaining that.
The grounds team at Wembley Stadium have been working on a unique project that means its pitches can now be 100% recyclable.
The pitch you see behind me is a hybrid carpet system, 5% plastic, 95% sand, grass and roots. So the reason we have plastic in modern day playing surfaces is to ensure that we give stability to the playing surface, and the plastic actually acts as a reinforcement to ensure that we can give the players who are playing on our playing surfaces a safe and playable surface. Each playing surface we have here at Wembley Stadium weighs around about 800 tonnes altogether, of which around about 8 tonnes to 9 tonnes of that is actually of the reinforced plastic that we have in the pitch. First thing we do is remove the playing surface from the venue. The grass will start to biodegrade, the material will start to biodegrade. We then put it through a screening process. It separates the plastic from the root zone and the sand, and any leftover pieces of grass or root. The plastic goes to a plastic manufacturer who will then extrude it into a mould to deliver anything we need from plastic format. The sand is then bagged, it can be used for end of season renovations, and for us that is what we class as a full circle model. So far we've made from the recycled plastic from the pitch is a prototype bench. We estimate from each playing surface we can deliver 50 benches. The whole idea now is to actually open up a library of what can we deliver back into grassroots football. Is it slalom poles? Is it cones? I mean, there's so many ideas that we're looking at the moment. What can we do to ensure 100% that goes back into grassroots football?
So that was Carl from Wembley, obviously explaining the sustainability cycle which we currently operate at Wembley. Obviously with 3 pitches a year, yeah, it's very high priority for them guys, and they're probably the leaders within the UK at this point in terms of what they're doing. Another very interesting project which we've undertaken recently this year, we worked very closely with a stadium in the US. This is essentially following a very similar model to what we would operate in the UK and Europe, but a little bit different. In America, they actually grow the sod on plastic, so even if hybrid, they'll grow on plastic. And from an interesting perspective, this is just some images which you'll see from the installation for SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. So you can see the plastic layer, the carpet installation, some sort of mapping of the moisture management from a drone, which was pretty cool, and obviously the final establishment period and the harvesting before it went down to SoFi. So some of you will be familiar with SoFi, most expensive stadium in the world. Los Angeles, predominantly a synthetic turf venue for the LA Rams and Chargers. And we worked there this March to deliver the Nations League finals events for CONCACAF. Very successful. One of the big things what we wanted to do is obviously try and gather some data for leading into the World Cup in 2026. And part of that we worked with Raw Stadia, ITF management, and also FIFA with the Flex machine. So at that point, I would say when we was there in March, it was probably the most heavily tested field in the world at that point, because we had 3 independent test houses essentially testing every day for field performance, which was also good because it gave us a very good insightful data about how we can manipulate the surface to obviously deliver best performance, but also give us the opportunity to create new strategies ahead of the 2026 World Cup. So we use it basically as a tool to find out, how we can get the pitch to perform optimally, but also give us some learnings on what we can do better going into 26. You can see by some of the graphs, how many tests were undertaken. This was the raw stadia data, so we tested every day. The data in green was from the farm, so it was obviously slightly different because obviously the root zone makeup was very different. It held a little bit more moisture in the farm, as you'd imagine. It wasn't on a constructed root zone. But again, once we got it to the stadium and we could start dialing in the density, we obviously achieved optimal traction, flag values, and obviously one real key factor specifically for the raw stadium is the boot selection, which I think is a game changer really, that you can actually give that advice to players prior to them coming onto the pitch. Again, we mapped everything. This is the data from the flex. This gave us very good insight to the pitch performance. Obviously going into 26, SoFi is the opening ceremony venue for the US. So we had essentially 4 days of rehearsals with maybe 1,000 people on the pitch. Obviously that will naturally have an impact on the pitch, and you can see just by the data which we could receive back from that machine, the high traffic areas, and then how we could manipulate that with aeration and maintenance practices to try and alleviate that. And that's something which we're taking a big learning on going into next year. This is some feedback which we had. We've got a small video in a minute. Very interesting video, slightly long, but I think for the group it's also interesting just to get a bit of insight to what's actually happening in the US. But essentially the feedback from both the venue and the players that used the facility in SoFi in March was very, very positive. I'm hoping there's going to be a video.
SoFi Stadium, Hollywood Park, and Clark Construction have put a lot of trust in our Brightview team, and we are very grateful to be involved in a project with this high profile. Special thank you to Otto Benedict and Colby Gardner with Hollywood Park, and Rick Solomon with Clark Construction. We recently installed a temporary natural grass pitch inside of SoFi Stadium in advance of reconstructing the field in 2026 for the World Cup.
We've installed this build to test the process, to test the construction, but also the maintenance, to train the staff, in all preparation for installing the field again in 2026.
Yeah, we've already got a few takeaways which we'll take into 26 as improvements, but again, full credit to Chris and the Brightview team. They've left no stone unturned in sort of delivering this project. I think what we've actually done this year as a collective has been, very impressive considering this is the first time this has been done. So, we spent probably 6 to 9 months working with building architect HKS and our design partner, Lloyd Sport and Engineering, to develop like a bespoke solution that was actually going to be fully functional and proven that it's worked very well. There were a number of design challenges that we had to overcome. We're in an indoor environment. It's built atop a perfectly flat concrete slab that has no drainage. So we had to design a drainage system that would allow us to evacuate water from the pitch. So we've used a combination of vacuum ventilation system in addition to permavoid, which allows us to store some water underneath the pitch as well. The construction and sequencing is unique on this project because there's no excavation. Everything was built up on top of the existing synthetic turf field, contour protection flooring, then we built up from there. We constructed it in a very condensed time frame. It'll be in for approximately 5 weeks, 2 weeks from sod installation to the first match, and then after the completion of the U.S. Women's National Team's game, we'll remove it in 5 days and turn it back over to the stadium. They have concerts scheduled immediately thereafter. I'd say the highlight of the project for me, besides like seeing the aesthetic and presentation on the pitch today, is just, once we got through like the first week and we realized like everything that we had dreamed about, talked about, and imagined was actually going to work. Like it was just kind of that aha moment when we knew like the plan was going to come together, it's going to be functional. We could achieve the schedule that a lot of people thought we may not be able to achieve. And so just knowing that we were going to make it felt good.
My name is Evan Fowler. I'm a VP of Sports Turf here. We're at Desert Green Sod Farm in Moses Lake, Washington, and we're harvesting some sod for SoFi Stadium. This is a Kentucky bluegrass perennial ryegrass blend, but it's grown in a hybrid mat. So what that means is it's an artificial fiber that's sticking up, makes up 10 to 20% of the total surface area, but you wouldn't necessarily see it out here because the natural grass is planted into it. The reason for that is essentially its strength. It makes a very, very rigid, thick sod, and this is basically game ready as soon as it's rolled up. We've basically been working for an entire year to get to this day, or these few days basically, and it's great to be here, and it's great to see it come out of the ground well. Mother Nature's cooperating. We've got a beautiful couple days here to do this, and a great team in SoFi that we're delivering to in the next couple weeks. So they're going to turn this thing into a game ready, beautiful playing surface.
We've enlisted the help of a couple of consultants with Premier League backgrounds. So Wayne Billings, formerly Tottenham, and Reese Watson, formerly of Arsenal, who's now with Raw Stadia, have been, absolutely essential in preparing this pitch and getting it to the point that it is today.
We installed this field 2 weeks ago, and we've used the Raw Stadia system to performance test the field every day.
And since we've been in the stadium, we've basically just been trying to acclimatise the turf to its new home. Obviously, it's coming from an outdoor environment where it gets everything it needs. We're bringing it to an indoor environment with an enclosed roof.
In order to support the highest quality turf in the indoor environment, we have to use supplemental LED grow lights.
Because we're semi-enclosed in this stadium, we get less light levels than you would in your garden or outside the stadium. So we use artificial grow lights to come in and supplement that light that we've lost.
With the World Cup coming up, we've invested so heavily in technology which is going to help us with survey systems, grow lighting, pitch sensors. All of this will aid in our day-to-day decision making and helping us produce the best possible pitch.
We've tested the pitch daily for things like hardness, rotational resistance, energy return.
We test it regularly because then it helps us make decisions on the maintenance of the field, how we adjust the performance of the field.
Reese and Wayne have been instrumental in providing the technical expertise and knowledge to get the pitch to the level we have it in such a short time.
We're a very passionate team. We don't accept mediocrity, so we want to push the levels and we want to deliver the ultimate surface for what this stadium deserves.
Obviously, the UK and Premier League pitches, we are very sort of OCD and very particular.
And we've been training the grounds crew here, but also the Brightview staff on how to raise the standards and how to create the optimum playing environment for the players on match day.
The last couple of weeks, to be honest with you, have been an absolute pleasure working with the guys and everyone at Brightview, Colby's team and the stadium staff have worked tirelessly to deliver what you see behind us today.
One really important part of all soccer pitches is the presentation. And a large part of that is the checkerboard pattern that we achieve through mowing the pitch both lengthways and widthways.
Leading up to match day, we'll start to put the stripes in and start to mow. So we use essentially 3 different types of mower. One to kind of hoover and suck up debris. We use one to verticut it, so to groom it and thin it out and to cut into the plant. And then we use kind of our real mowers, which gives the final finish and the presentation for match day.
For me personally, this is going to be probably the pinnacle of my career. I've been in some very high profile venues, but in terms of World Cup, this is my first go around with a World Cup.
It's a very exciting project to be a part of. It's likely redefining what can be constructed for a temporary surface for elite level play.
And I think everyone should be proud to be associated, to be fair.
After the completion of all of the test matches, we have 5 days to remove the entire field and return it back to the concept section flooring. Similar to the initial build, we're planning to work 24/7 to remove the pitch. We're salvaging the permavoid, a lot of the irrigation components, the sand, etc. to reutilize in 2026 for the World Cup.
Again, slightly long video, but I think it's a really good video just to sort of display all of the efforts of what are going into the 2026 World Cup, and what is in my opinion probably the best stadium in the world, and obviously it's a privilege for for us as Hatko to be a part of it. We'll be there for 2 months next year leading the local grounds team, which will be a privilege again. Obviously, you have to remember the local grounds team have very minimal knowledge of natural grass. It's traditionally a synthetic turf venue, so to be able to go in there and lead that team is a big honour for us. We've sort of come to the end of the presentation now, guys, but I'm going to be around most of today, so if you have any questions, obviously feel free to ask. I know many of you anyway, so that's it from me. Any questions, please feel free to ask.